Some say their truck reflects who they are, dependable and reliable. That's why you trust Blue Def. Now the best just got better. Introducing Blue Def Platinum, a revolutionary innovation with advanced System Shield technology to significantly reduce harmful deposits. To maintain fuel economy, save money on costly repairs, and sustain the life of your SCR system, there's only one DEF to choose. Blue Def Platinum. The best just got better.
You might have noticed a change in your neighborhood lately. Yep, Sprint stores are now T-Mobile stores. Now that Sprint is T-Mobile, you get more coverage, value, and benefits than ever before. We've invested billions to bring our 5G from big cities to small towns across America. And great coverage is just the start. From high-speed mobile hotspot data to weekly deals and giveaways, our customers get tons of great benefits. Head to your new T-Mobile store to learn more.
Qualifying service and capable device required. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain plan or features. See T-Mobile.com.
For over 350 years, the state of South Carolina has been the setting for some of the most horrendous crimes ever committed. Some have gained global notoriety, some have been forgotten, and others have been swept under the rug completely. Now, a state law enforcement operative and a local broadcasting personality have teamed up to examine these heinous acts in detail and have added a fresh perspective of their own. You're listening to Carolina Crimes.
And welcome to this week's edition of Carolina Crimes, the only weekly episodic podcast dealing exclusively with crimes from the state of South Carolina. Hi, I'm Matt Hires, one of your co-hosts, along with
Danielle Myers.
And we are so happy, we're thrilled that you joined us today. As you can tell, we might sound a little bit different this episode. We have left the cozy confines of our studio. And Danielle, we are on family vacation.
Yes, it's finally here.
Yeah. Eat your heart out, Clark Griswold. We are all here. My wife and kids, Danielle and her husband, parents, our long-lost sister Melody and her husband. We're all here down at Fripp Island. We're actually on location because this week, this is where our episode is going to originate from. Yes. And before we really get into this story, we've got a few housekeeping things we need to take care of. We've got some shout-outs, some special thanks to everyone. Thank you to Tyler Cupp with OTS Media. He is actually going to be editing this episode for us and making sure we sound somewhat good, even though we're not in the studio. We apologize for that, but we did want to give you an episode or two here while we are on vacation. We're going to record our next couple episodes while we're down here together. We hope you enjoy them. Again, it's not studio audio quality, but we're giving you the content, and this one is going to be a wild, wild ride.
Yes, it definitely is.
Well, without any further ado, the following thanks. Thank you, Vinny Valone, Courtney Lockhart, Christy Mize, Tina Schellinger, Keisha Cawthon, Robin up in Greenville, thank you so much for your story suggestion. Jenny Pittman, Deborah Hockensmith, thank you. Casey Hopper, I want to say longtime listener, but we've only been at this about 3 months. But she is a very faithful listener. And a very special thank you. Thank you to Amy Thompson. A very special thank you to Wendy Stewart, Sandra Stamey, Kelly Ware, and Aaron Kirkland. These guys can be considered producers of Carolina Crimes. They have been online. They visited carolinacrimesstore.com. They're starting to get the Carolina Crimes merch. They're really into it, and we can't thank you enough for making this possible.
Yes, thank you, because it's just two of us. We can only do so much. So,
but we really thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Something we need to bring up, and Danielle's working with a broken headphone right now, but something we need to bring up that we've touched on social media. We've put out a few links especially to Fitz News. We appreciate those folks over there keeping on top of this story. But we are down in the heart of the 14th Solicitors District here in South Carolina, and there has been some major drama over the last over the last 6 days.
Yes. Something new every day.
Yes, in regards to the Murdaugh family from Islandton, South Carolina. Just to brief you what's going on, if you're not familiar or haven't seen that in the news, the Murdaugh family, it's spelled Murdaugh but pronounced Murdoch. They are a family of legal eagles. They from 1920 to 2006, one of the Murdaugh family, they have served as solicitor for the 14th Circuit. Now, for those of you not familiar with South Carolina's form of legal government, I should say, a solicitor is the equivalent to a DA or district attorney.
Yes.
And what's going on is back in 2019, now there's the fourth and fifth generation of Murdaughs down here. Of course, they're all involved in the legal community, but one of the young men, Paul Murdaugh, was in a tragic boating accident where Mallory Beach, lovely young girl, lost her life. It's been alleged he was intoxicated. He has been charged with 3 felony counts of BUI, or boating under the influence. There's been a lot of pushback from the community because Paul never spent a night in jail. He was out on a personal recognizance bond. The bond kept getting reduced, giving him more leeway and special privileges. A lot of folks said, oh, that must be because of the legal power of his family. Mm-hmm. So, long story short, this young man never spent a night in jail, never had to take a mug shot in his prison oranges. He got to take it in his dapper streetwear. And that sat wrong with a lot of folks. His criminal trial was not on any court dockets. It looked like it had continuously been sloughed off. And that really angered a lot of folks, especially Mallory Beach's family, the community at large. Basically, there's the haves and the have-nots in this part of the world, and the have-nots were very upset about this.
Rightfully so. And
it looked like I try to live by Atticus Finch, the old fictional character from To Kill a Mockingbird. Mm-hmm. Equal treatment for all and special privileges for none. And it certainly didn't look like that's what was going on down in this part of the world. Well, this past Monday, I got a call actually from Rita Schuler. And she said, have you been keeping up with this Murdaugh situation? I said, well, yeah, I know 2 years ago there was a tragic boating accident. And she informed me then that Paul Murdaugh and his mother Maggie had been found Monday evening. They were murdered at their family home. So I don't know if, at this point it's just speculation. It's an ongoing investigation, but we are staying on top of it. There's been different facts, different allegations, and for the sheer purpose of fairness, we're going to acknowledge that this is going on right now, but we're not going to come to any conclusions or add to any speculations or rumors. But go over to fitznews.com. Those guys over there, guys and young ladies, do an excellent job covering this case and putting out all the facts. Will Folks is the editor over there. He does an outstanding job covering political news, and just he's very non-mainstream. If you want to know the truth, all too often today, I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but it seems like news outlets, they're rather red or blue, and it seems to be more of an opinion. But Will Folks, he does a great objective job over there. check out all this information coming out about the Murdaugh family. This is going to be a Carolina Crimes episode.
Absolutely.
It may be a 2 or 3 part Carolina Crimes episode, the more that starts getting uncovered. But we did want to acknowledge that. We're not going to cover that right off the bat. We've had a lot of people ask. But what we are going to do, we are going to cover a crime today from Fripp Island, South Carolina. And when we originated, we started thinking about putting Carolina crimes together. This was one that was in the forefront of our minds, Danielle.
Yeah. We used to, the first time I ever came here, you and Kevin, we were riding around on the golf cart, and I remember you telling me this story, and it was pitch dark outside, and I seriously thought y'all were just messing with me. And I'm like, this did not happen. Y'all were just saying this to scare me, and you're like, look it up. And I did, and I'll be damned. It was there.
Yeah. It's a wild tale. But for those of you that don't know, you still run into a lot of people that have never heard of Fripp Island.
Yes.
And this is really this is a vacation resort spot down in South Carolina in Beaufort County. And it is really where Carolina Crimes was born. Because like Danielle said, Danielle, her husband Kevin, me and my wife Ashley, we would stay up all hours of the night, riding around on golf carts, and eventually the conversation always turned to crime. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'd try to pick Danielle's brain of being employed with SLED, things that I've read. We'd always trade materials, books, and have great conversations about crimes in the state of South Carolina. And this is really the incubator. Mm-hmm. This is the place where Carolina Crimes was born.
Yes, it was. Absolutely.
Well, Fripp Island, it's a 6.5 square mile barrier island in Beaufort County, South Carolina. Basically, you take Highway 21 till it ends. It's 96 miles south of Charleston, South Carolina, and 65 miles north of Savannah, and a pretty small community, as you might imagine, with only 887 full-time residents. Now, we've said Fripp is situated between Charleston and Savannah. More specifically, it is situated between Edisto Island, which many people are familiar with, and Paris Island, which millions of people are familiar with. The Marine Corps recruiting depot is just 2 islands over. Now, Fripp Island, it was named for Captain Johannes, or John Fripp. He was a British captain charged with protecting the Carolina colony from Spanish attack. And legend has it that Edward Teach, a.k.a. Blackbeard, the pirate that terrorized Charleston with blockades, the North and South Carolina coast, that he had stored a vast amount of treasure on Fripp Island in the early 1700s. So
we have some stuff to do this week. Got some digging.
Yeah, we can, dress up as the Goonies and go looking for pirate treasure or something. I don't know, but that is what legend says. Now, up until the mid-20th century, Fripp Island, it was used primarily as a hunting preserve until 1961, when a bridge was constructed connecting Fripp Island to Hunting Island, the next island over, which is a beautiful state park if you're ever looking for someone. So Fripp was then connected to Hunting Island and then subsequently the outside world. Fripp Island, it quickly became developed, and it was a resort community. In the 60s, had a racket club. Now there's 2 golf courses, a marina, different villas and homes. It's such a non-commercialized island. It's really I don't want to use the word commune. That's kind of negative, but it's almost a world to itself, and it's wonderful to get away from the mainstream.
I would say it would be the opposite of Myrtle Beach. The touristy, it's everything that I like in a vacation, where it's just quieter, slower pace. Not a bunch of bells and whistles when you're doing stuff. Just a place to relax. It's a really good place to relax. No
wings and eagles, Club Kryptonite, go-karts, putt-putt, nothing like that.
No gay dolphin.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing like that. One of the most famous residents here of Fripp Island was my favorite author, Pat Conroy. He has written several novels, probably most Most noteworthy was Prince of Tides, The Great Santini, Lords of Discipline, The Water is Wide, which was also made into a movie, Conrack. Beach Music, I mean, the list goes on and on. South of Broad, I think, was one of his last fiction books to come out, but a very accomplished author. Wonderful man who passed away a couple years ago of pancreatic cancer, but he made his home here on Fripp Island. Well, now that we've set the scene for Fripp Island, we're going to go northwest, Danielle. We're going to go up to, this story is going to begin in the late 1800s, 1894, in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we will continue with this story, and we're going to get into the meat of this thing when we come back right after this word from our sponsors.
You might have noticed a change in your neighborhood lately. Yep, Sprint stores are now T-Mobile stores. Now that Sprint is T-Mobile, you get more coverage, value, and benefits than ever before. We've invested billions to bring our 5G from big cities to small towns across America. And great coverage is just the start. From high-speed mobile hotspot data to weekly deals and giveaways, our customers get tons of great benefits. Head to your new T-Mobile store to learn more.
Qualifying service and capable device required. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain plan or features. See T-Mobile.com.
September is the most birthday-packed month of the year, so chances are you have a few celebrations coming up. Make sure your friends and family feel special with a gorgeous bouquet of roses from 1-800-Flowers.com. 1-800-Flowers makes it easy to send the perfect gift. 24 multicolored roses for just $39.99. To get 24 multicolored roses for just $39.99, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/tune-in. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/tune-in.
Life gets more magical when you dream. So dream of a Disney cruise filled with magic and wonder.
Hiya, pal!
Sail from Florida to Disney's private island paradise and get ready for a dream come true with Disney Cruise Line.
And welcome back to Carolina Crimes. We appreciate our sponsors. And Danielle, let's dig into this thing. We're going to Knoxville, Tennessee in 1894. A lady was born into much wealth and privilege by the name of Ellen McClung. Ellen, she was the great-great-granddaughter of Knoxville founder James White, and on the other side, the great-great-granddaughter of Charles McClung, who was the author of the first Constitution for the state of Tennessee. So,
very, very prominent family.
She is a blue blood, if blue bloods exist in the state of Tennessee. I have a love-hate relationship with that state, but that's for another time, maybe a bonus episode of Tennessee crimes. But excuse me. Now, in 1928, Ellen, she married Thomas Huntington Berry, who was a coal magnate from Georgia. And Ellen, she grew up, of course, living a pampered life. She traveled extensively along with her husband Thomas, and it was quoted that she was often clothed in the finest fashions from Paris and Rome. Now, we're thinking about early 1900s, and it says traveled extensively. We're not talking about taking the Concorde or any Boeing jets. Danielle, they had to go by boat.
Yeah. You don't get places as fast then as you do today.
No, you're talking about like a week or two. I'm estimating here. A boat trip, like a cruise. Something like you saw on Titanic or something like that.
They have to make it an experience.
So obviously, we're talking about upper crust, super wealthy. And of course, Thomas, he had a nice pile of wealth as well from being what they called a coal magnate from Rome, Georgia. Now, in 1932, the Berrys, Ellen and Thomas, they welcomed into the world their only child, Hugh Lawson McClung Berry, known as Hugh. And in 1936, Ellen, Thomas, and the 4-year-old Hugh, they moved into Ellen's family home. It was an estate after her father had passed away. And You know people have money when their house has a name, not an address. And this home, it was named Belcaro. And they said it was a Mediterranean-style home in the hills of Tennessee with massive gardens, just lavish landscapes, and everything anybody would want. I mean, I'm imagining these 1930s movies, people walking around these vast gardens and just all the opulence.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to have to name my house when we get back. Make myself sound fancy.
What are you going to name it?
I have no idea. I'll work on that this week.
Yeah, we'll tell you on the next episode what Danielle decided to name her house. But the Berry family, the three of them, they did move into Belcaro, and they did so with the reason of taking care of Ellen's mother, Ella, who was still alive at that point. And that's what people did back then. Now, Hugh, he was an only child. He was doted upon by his mother and father. And you got to think, if you were doing some math here with our dates we were throwing out, Hugh was born to Ellen and Thomas when Ellen was 38 years old. In the 1930s...
It's not uncommon now, but it was extremely uncommon then.
Yes, it was considered a medical miracle at that point. Well, I wouldn't say medical miracle, but it was very, very difficult for a woman in her late 30s to have a successful pregnancy. And, of course, they had the money to get the best care. So Hugh was the light of their life. Now, Ellen continued to live the socialite life. She liked being philanthropic. She loved art. She loved fashion, anything European she was into. And Ellen continued this into Hugh's boyhood, and Hugh was actually sent off to the prestigious Groton boarding school in Connecticut. And he got a fine, fantastic education there and ended up graduating high school around 1951. Now, aside from the Berries' travel abroad, one of the main trips that they took as a family every year was to Palm Beach, Florida. The entire family went down, got off the mountain, got off the hill in Knoxville, and went down to Florida to enjoy a nice time. Now, in 1951, right after Hugh Berry's graduation, he went on this trip with his family, and he had a confrontation with his grandmother Ella and also his father Thomas in concerns to his inheritance. Now, take it the point, he was right out of high school. Now, during this altercation, Hugh Berry produced a shotgun.
Oh, okay.
And ended up killing his grandmother and his and injuring his father Thomas with the shotgun. I mean, the blast, it killed Ella instantly, his grandmother, but like I said, only wounded his father Thomas. And when authorities were called in, Hugh even shot a police officer who was pursuing him. So this guy was going on a killing rampage. It sounded like greed was a motivator, especially since the dispute was over his inheritance. And you got to look at this thing and, wow, maybe this is some privileged kid that went wild and started killing people.
Never heard no. And now all of a sudden he's hearing it.
Revert back to the beginning of this podcast and listen to current events. Just read between the lines on that one. But Hugh was apprehended, and very quickly, he was deemed mentally insane and could not stand trial for the murder of his grandmother, the attempted murder on a police officer, and his father. Now, Ellen McClung Berry, she always claimed that she believed Hugh's mental state stemmed from a head injury that he had suffered at the age of 15. And this was so long ago, and the medical records, there weren't very well kept or as stringently kept as they are today. And so there's no real record of a significant head injury or trauma that would have caused this. But this is what Ellen blamed Hugh's mental state on nonetheless. So instead of prison, Hugh Barry, he was sent at the direction of his mother Ellen to an asylum where he was lobotomized.
That probably made it worse.
Well, my conception of a lobotomy, I've always heard that term, and a few of our listeners may think, well, yeah, I thought they always took his brain out, or almost like a brain transplant, and made a guy a vegetable. But the more I looked at this, I'll credit my wife Ashley for looking this up. A lobotomy, it was an arcane remedy for mental illness where doctors would actually perform brain surgery and cut the neurons and cut all the connections between the temporal lobe and the frontal lobe, and which would change the personality of someone.
I've heard that the frontal lobe is what holds a lot of a person's personality, and it's where impulse control comes from, and I think they ended up hurting more than they helped by performing that procedure.
Yeah, that's arcane is a good way to describe that. But Hugh, he was lobotomized, and he was sent to live out his days in Guadalajara, Mexico. Several years later, in 1963, it was reported back to the Barrys, Ellen and Thomas, that Hugh had in fact died of pneumonia and other health complications while in Mexico. So for the last 12 years, the Barrys, they didn't have correspondence. They didn't see or visit their son Hugh because basically they would have been unrecognizable to Hugh after this lobotomy. And really, I can't imagine him having a very good quality of life.
No, and that had to have been hard for Ellen, considering this is her only child, one that she doted on, and to have, not only him be away, but then to have no contact, and then you just hear he died, and that's it.
Yeah, and there's a even more special bond, as we found out, between, I don't want to say 38 is older, but older ladies that have children later in life. Go back to episode 1 with Crystal Faye Todd and Miss Todd there, and how much she thought of her daughter, and how that was just the light of her life to have her. And I believe she had Crystal, I believe she had her at 38. I'll have to go back and listen, but
it was definitely later than what was, I guess, considered normal at that time.
So you see that trait coming out in mothers that have children later in life. Now, while Hugh was committed down in Mexico to live out the rest of his life, Thomas and Ellen, they began to live their life even more opulently. They garnered more wealth, and they gave it away. They were very giving people, it seemed like, and they were one of the most philanthropic couples in the state of Tennessee. And they even purchased a grand estate at this time, and donated heavily also to the University of Tennessee. Now, in 1977, the Barrys, after donating a lot of their land and one of their estates they had procured to the University of Tennessee, they believed what they thought would be their retirement home in 1977. And that was an estate called Barrymount. And it was, I think for them it would be considered downsizing, but it's still a mansion that's...
It'd probably be upgrading for me.
Oh, absolutely. It's over 6,000 square feet. I think it was a couple hundred acres of farmland, guest house, and all the bells and whistles. And so in 1977, Thomas and Ellen McClung Barry moved into Barrymount, their new estate. Beginning in the early 70s, prior to the construction of this home, the Barrys, and particularly Ellen, she began to correspond with a younger gentleman a man of Danish descent by the name of Daniel Tondevold. Tondevold, he was a self-professed international businessman and also a wannabe or aspiring writer. And the Berries, they really enjoyed hearing from Daniel and corresponding with him. And I think a little piece, and a lot of Ellen Berry's friends have said, a little piece of her, she had almost replaced Hugh's memory with Daniel Tondevold.
So this was somebody who kind of came in and filled that void that she had when she lost her son. Right,
and the Berries, they took to Dan Tondevold because he reminded them of Hugh, and he even looked like him a little bit too. So that helped. Unfortunately, in 1978, Thomas Berry, he did pass away. He was up in age in his 80s at this point, and he ended up passing away in 1978. Well, that's when the 46-year-old Dan Tondevold, he thought it would be best to come visit his friend Ellen McClung Berry upon the death of her husband, and this lady that he had been corresponding with via letter for so many years, go and pay his condolences, see what she needed, and just care for her, because Dan, he had a what seemed to be a large heart, and he really connected with Ellen McClung Berry. It wasn't long before Miss Berry, she invited Dan Tondevold to live in the guest house there at Berry Mount. She often introduced him in her social circles. She still got around. She was around in her early 80s at this point, and she still got around, but she was introducing Dan Tondevold as her godson and also as a friend of Hugh's, which was very odd. Dan Tondevold, he appreciated Ellen McClung Berry letting him live on the estate, on the property, and he often said that he was working on writing a book in the guest house, and he began to help maintain and manage the estate there at Berry Mount. You can imagine, with a huge swath of land and a huge home, that it takes a lot of care, it takes a lot of work to keep it up. Well, Dan, he fit into that role perfectly, and Ellen and Dan they became companions. They became good friends. Several of Miss Berry, her friends, they were pleased. They thought it was a little bit of an odd situation. What say you about that?
I mean, it's definitely not. It's not common, but I think I don't think that they think that there was anything to it. You want to make sure, though, that you're watching out for people who not only are older like that, but then have that much money that somebody's not going to try to take advantage, or, you know, they're there for the right purposes. And it's probably just people looking out for their friends. But at that age, she'd already lost her son, and then she just lost her husband. And so, like you said, companionship is probably just, you know, someone to talk to, someone to spend time with. And it's just developed a friendship. And I mean, I think it's normal. The age difference probably makes it a little bit abnormal for some people, and
people get lonely.
Yeah.
And Dan Tondevold, he was of a Danish descent and spoke with a thick Danish accent, and Miss Berry, loving all things European, that probably appealed to her as well. But Dan and Ellen became a fixture around the Tennessee social scene. And friends, they thought it a little different, you know, that Ellen would have this man living in her guest house. And before you all go there was nothing romantically going on between the two.
This is just a friendship.
Yeah, this is just companionship. And while it was a little different, most of her friends thought it was great. Yeah. That she wasn't up there all alone in this huge estate at her elderly age, that she had someone up there looking out for her.
Yeah, and they probably noticed a change in her demeanor too, where she's out still being social, still doing all the things that she loves to do. She's being, you know, she's having a good time. They can tell that her demeanor, she's just, you know, happy to have somebody there with her. So I think they probably recognize that as well.
Right, and by 1979, Dan Tondevold had really taken over the complete managership, I guess, or the complete running of Berrymount there for Ellen Berry, and all the grounds work he supervised, any of the maintenance to the home, and then he began to help Miss Berry with her banking, which you've really got to have someone trusted, especially if you have as much wealth as Miss Berry, to take care of all your banking needs.
Yes.
At one point in 1981, Ellen, one of Dan Tondevold's favorite pastimes was horses. He was really into the equestrian lifestyle, loved show horses, and Miss McLung Berry, she began to fund Dan Tondevold's hobby.
And that's not a cheap hobby.
No, I've never had a horse, so but that's a pretty large hobby, especially if you're on a grand scale of show horses. It's one thing to have a couple running around your pasture, you feed them, hey, we could throw a saddle on them and ride them, but these were the creme de la creme of horses. So the show horses, of course, Dan Tondevold, as a tip of the cap to Ellen Berry, started to name all the horses after her and after Berrymount. And he had Berrymounts 1 through 7. So 7 of these show horses. And a lot of Ellen's friends, they said, hey, what are you doing? You know, you've invited this guy, you've corresponded via letters, here he is living in your guest house, and now you're spending over $1 million of 1981 money on show horses. Ellen, what are you doing? Are you going senile? And she assured everyone, no, this is what he enjoys. He helps me out with all my finances. And I think that what shut everybody up was she said, hey, look, it's my money, and this $1 million for these horses doesn't even put a dent in what I've got. That's a heck of a quote. And that
I strive to say that one day.
We will. By the way, go to www.carolinacrimestore.com to send Danielle on her way. In 1982, Ellen McLung Berry granted power of attorney to Dan Tondevold. And I think everyone listening knows what power of attorney is. That basically means somebody else owns you. Someone else has power over all of your assets. For older people or invalid folks, you will see this because people take care of them. Usually it's a child or a trusted brother or sister, but someone, usually if they're becoming incapacitated or if they are incapacitated, that's when a power of attorney is going to come into play. But still, with all her faculties, Ellen Berry, she trusted Dan so much, and he had lived on the estate now for almost 4 years and taken very good care of her and her finances and all her bills. She granted power of attorney to Dan Tondevold in 1982. And when we come back, we're going to see where this power of attorney, where these racehorses and where everything goes in this story. And we hadn't even been to South Carolina yet, guys. We've been talking about Tennessee the whole time, but we're going to South Carolina on the other side of this break.
For the ones going above and beyond. For the ones reaching out, helping out, and lending a hand. For the ones people count on. You can count on Grainger. Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry. Backed by 24/7 customer support and specialists to help with hard-to-find products. Because you've got everyone's back. We've got yours. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy is suspected of having killed as many as 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series that investigates the crimes that shocked the nation.
The thing everybody thought they knew wasn't the whole story.
John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now. Devil in Disguise. Only on Peacock.
Life gets more magical when you dream. So dream of a Disney cruise filled with magic and wonder.
Hiya, pal!
Sail from Florida to Disney's private island paradise and get ready for a dream come true with Disney Cruise Line.
Welcome back to Carolina Crimes. We appreciate our sponsors for that quick word. And when we left off, we were in the state of Tennessee, where millionaire heiress and socialite Ellen McClung Berry, at 84 years old, she had taken in Dan Tondevold, a Danish accented 46-year-old man who had taken care of her residence for her, been a caretaker for her, a companion. She had also bought him over $1 million worth of racing horses at this point. Show horses at this point. And she had just granted in 1982 Daniel Tondevold power of attorney over her estate. Well, this went on well for 2 years, this arrangement. Dan Tondevold took care of Miss Berry, took care of all the finances, made sure all the bills were paid, and the estate was maintained. In the winter of 1984, here's where South Carolina comes into play, Danielle. In the winter of 1984, Dan Tondevold convinced Ellen McClung Berry that she should winter in Charleston, South Carolina, because the hills of Tennessee, they can get very cold, they can get very icy and snowy. And with her advanced age, he thought it would be best to, let's take a 4-month vacation in Charleston, South Carolina, the most hospitable town in America.
Yeah, it's a great location.
So on this trip to Charleston, Ellen agreed. It was Ellen, Dan, and one of her housekeepers that it was described, a housekeeper / caretaker / domestic that really took care of the household chores that Dan Tondevold seemed to be a little too good for, I would say. While this threesome was in Charleston, they drove down in Mrs. Berry's antique Mercedes. It was a brown Mercedes, and while they were in Charleston, they enjoyed the finer things. Miss Berry went out shopping, ate at some of the very famous restaurants around Charleston, South Carolina at that time, and just really enjoyed herself on this trip. But meanwhile, behind Miss Berry's back, in the Charleston Post and Courier, Dan Tondevold took out a classified ad, which really, that wouldn't raise eyebrows because he was in charge of the estate, hiring and firing staff and any of the workers or vendors on the property. But he took out this ad, which was a little odd. And it says, wanted, male houseman chauffeur, valid non-accident license. A valet for East Tennessee country estate. A 2-member family. I guess he was referring to he and Ellen. Mm-hmm. Other staff includes a cook and a housekeeper. This kind of made me chuckle. This next part, he says he wanted a non-smoker, single, and non-fat. So
is he looking for help or a date? That came into question, and all throughout this story, a lot of folks kind of questioned Dan Tondevold's sexuality, which I don't care about. Whatever. I'm not sleeping with Dan Tondevold, and he's not sleeping with me, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, do you, Dan. But he wanted someone that was non-fat and someone that must like the privacy of the country. Get this part. Dan Tondevold asked, please write with personal details and include a picture, if possible.
and that he will be in Charleston to interview this weekend. Experience not necessary, will train. So he's looking for a domestic, puts out an ad in the Charleston paper for an estate in East Tennessee, which now that part does raise eyebrows.
Yeah, that's weird that he would do that, especially because, I mean, he obviously didn't have any problems finding people when he was up in Tennessee and finding, like you said, hiring and firing staff. He clearly knew how to find people, so it's just weird that he would need to go to those lengths in another state to find somebody.
Maybe he thought we had better manners in South Carolina than in East Tennessee, more well-heeled, or someone more to his liking. Yeah, I don't know. And like you said, maybe it was a sexual thing. Maybe he was looking for a manservant, which, you know, whatever, Dan, but good for him. So the ad was placed unbeknownst to Miss Berry in the Charleston paper, and when it came March 31st, 1984, it was time for the whole Berry troop to go back to Berry Mount and go back to the state of Tennessee. Well, Ellen, she was going to fly back from Charleston International Airport to the Knoxville Airport, along with the housekeeper, the female helper, the domestic help. And Dan volunteered. He said, okay, we drove down here in the Mercedes. I'll just drive back. I'll take the car. You ladies go ahead and fly. I'll do the grunt work and drive. And of course, Ellen, oh, thank you, Dan. You're always the best. And this got me too. He said, I will drive back with the furs and the jewelry.
Oh.
So,
okay.
For a 4-month vacation, I guess Mrs. Berry was taking furs and jewelry.
Yeah.
So
you got to be prepared.
That's right. Well, there on March 31st, upon the return to Berry Mount, Miss Berry and her domestic helper, they went inside the estate and they found that the lights had been turned off, like the electricity. They were trying to turn the lights on and they wouldn't turn on. So they went to call the electric company there in East Tennessee. I don't know if they still use the TVA or what their power grid's on, but they went and the phone was also disconnected. Now, this was the day, of course, before cell phones. This is 1985 at this point. So no lights and no phone. And then looking around the home there at Berry Mount, they saw that several valuable antiques were actually missing out of the home, and they thought they had been robbed. So the authorities were called, and come to find out, the utilities were terminated at Berry Mount for failure of payment. And they said they had been delinquent for almost 3 months, and at the 3-month part, now keep in mind they were in Charleston on this 4-month vacation arranged by Dan Tondevold. At the 3-month mark, the services were terminated. The phone company said the same thing. Bills were unpaid, they were left. Nobody was taking care of this estate anymore. Well, to make everything right, Miss Berry said, okay, we'll go to the bank, we'll get the money to pay these back bills. I can't believe Dan forgot to do this. He'd never done this before. Well, the worst surprise was yet to come when Miss Berry went to her bank, several banks that she had accounts with around the Knoxville, Tennessee area, and all the accounts were drained.
Ugh, that had to have been such a gut-wrenching feeling.
Millions of dollars. She also discovered that mortgages had been taken out on Berry Mount for cash. So more mortgages. Now she's a woman of 84 years of age with absolutely no funds in the bank account and no way to pay her domestic helper now. And Dan, he's in the Mercedes driving from Charleston to Knoxville, Tennessee, which I've done, and that's not a very pleasant trip. But he's on the way back, and he's going to have to get this thing all squared away because Miss Berry has no money.
Yeah, he's got a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah, and now for the first time ever in her life, she's got a mortgage to pay. 2 mortgages.
Yeah, to be that age and to run into money problems for the first time. I mean, what do you do?
Well, as she waited for Dan Tondevold to show back up, her trusted power of attorney, he never did. Where Dan Tondevold went while Miss Berry and her helper were going north, Dan Tondevold was headed south. He was coming to Fripp Island, South Carolina, in Miss Berry's Mercedes, with Miss Berry's credit cards, and with all of Miss Berry's cash. There has been estimated through the years how much money she was actually taken for, and estimates say somewhere between $10 to $15 million. And it was all gone. And we're talking $10 to $15 million in 1985.
Yes.
I mean, that was 15 times more than what Dr. J, was the best basketball player around that time, was making. You know, of course, rookie Michael Jordan wasn't making that money. No pro athletes. I mean, this was way over their status. So Dan Tondevold went to hole up at Fripp Island, South Carolina, where we are here now. And he rented a villa here at one of the tennis villas here at Fripp Island. Mm-hmm. Very nice place to be, very nice. The security guards, they remember seeing him going in and out of the gates, waving and passing, and he, of course, enjoyed resort pools and had a great time living on Fripp Island until the day when he decided he wanted to upgrade his accommodations a little bit more and went to the resort office here at Fripp Island, and there was an issue. The credit card that he was using, the last one that belonged, of course, to Ellen McClung Berry, had been declined. It had been maxed out. And so, no sweat, Dan Tondevold, the smooth talker that he was, just turned around, walked out. He said, "I'll take care of it. Let me go back to my villa. I'll get you a check. I apologize about this." How embarrassing. You know, made a big scene to the guy. Well, Danielle, that was the last time Dan Tondevold was ever seen. When authorities and the resort personnel, they went to Mr. Tondevold's villa that he was staying in, he was not there. He was missing, but he had left a suicide note outlining, actually, it was almost an apology letter to Miss McClung Berry about what he was doing, or what he had done to her, and that he was missing completely at this point. And interesting enough, in this letter from Dan Tondevold was also the instructions about how his body was to be handled. His last wishes were to be cremated immediately, that he was so embarrassed for what he had done. So police were called in from the Fripp Island security and also the resort manager. And yeah, suicide note was there, but there's no body. There's nobody in the villa. There's nobody around. Nobody has reported finding a dead body anywhere. So police are at a standstill. Here's this guy, and he's admitted to stealing these millions of dollars from this elderly lady that he just fleeced in Tennessee. He took advantage of, and now he's nowhere to be found. But there's a suicide note and him saying how sorry he is.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, is there even a body to be found?
Well, there was. 2 weeks later, the coroner for Beaufort County found a body in the marsh here on Fripp Island with no ID. There was a dog that had been shot beside him in the marsh, and also there was a pistol found right beside, just inches from his hand, and it was an antique pistol that had belonged to Ellen McClung Berry, one of those valuable antiques that was missing from Berrymount. No ID was on the body, but all of Ellen McClung Berry's maxed out credit cards were on this person. Now, this body had been sitting in the marsh on Fripp Island here for over 2 weeks. And we're talking late March. It's still cooler outside, but it's warming up. Spring is there. You're at the beginning of April, and you're going to have some temperatures probably in the 70s or 80s, which are pretty comfortable. Mm-hmm. But when you think about the marsh, and we're actually going to go to this spot. If you follow us on social media at Carolina Crimes Podcast on Facebook, we're going to probably do a live video from out there, at least pictures from later this week of where this body was found. Something very prevalent out there are little critters, crabs, raccoons, possums, all kinds of scavengers.
Fluff mud.
Yeah, that included, but all kinds of scavengers that would have just accelerated the decomposition of this body that was out there. And I could just imagine what kind of state this body was in at this point.
Yeah, it probably wasn't a pretty sight.
Well, the only person that could ID the body, they brought in the Fripp Island security guard, and of course they were looking for Daniel Tondevold. And the security guard here on Fripp Island, he identified the body. He said, "Yes, that's the man that kept passing by in the brown Mercedes." Now, keep in mind, this security guard had never had a conversation with Dan Tondevold. He had never been in his company. He had seen him going in and out of the front gate. That's it. But he was relied upon to make a positive ID on this dead body. Well, according to the letter that Dan Tondevold left, the body was cremated. No family members. They couldn't find any family members for Dan. No next of kin. Nothing. So he was cremated at that point, and all the evidence of that body was destroyed. Well, there's a lot of theories about this, as you can imagine, Danielle.
Yes.
The first of which, hey, maybe this guy got a conscience out of bilking millions of dollars off of this lady. Maybe he really did feel bad. Wander out in the marsh after he had stolen all this money that nobody can find and shot himself in the head. The other theory that is the most common, lay it on us there, Danielle, and that I believe, that we believe,
is that it wasn't him at all. That this ad that he had put in the Charleston paper asking for a look-alike made people believe he wanted somebody, and including a photo, and when you send in your information also to see what this person looks like. I think we believe he wanted to find somebody who looked similar enough might be able to be misidentified as being him, and then he in turn killed this person and faked his own death, his own suicide, and he took off to parts unknown. And
why would you go to the trouble of stealing all that money if you're just not going to use it and kill yourself?
And even if her cards were maxed out, if he had taken that much money from her, there had to have been other avenues, the antiques. He was in her car with the furs, jewelry. You could have, sold that stuff. I mean, there were plenty of opportunities for him to get money. It wasn't like he was completely backed in a corner where he was out of all of his resources.
He had money somewhere. It was hidden. But here's this dead body on Fripp Island, and that is the most logical theory. And this is still, they've never, for all intents and purposes, for all legal purposes, this body that they found on Fripp Island is considered to be Dan Tondevold, and case closed. He was dead. He shot himself. We cremated him. That's it. But there's so many unturned stones in this case, and that is the most plausible. That ad in Charleston, Dan Tondevold was on the hunt for a look-alike that he could pin this on, where he could say in his suicide, quote-unquote, suicide note, cremate me immediately. That way, all the evidence is burned to pieces, and even members of law enforcement believe in this theory that there was a lookalike, that Dan Tondevold faked his death to get away with Ellen McClungberry's millions. And one of them was from actually Miss McClungberry's hometown, White Pines, Tennessee.
Yeah, Officer Dean Smith of the White Pines Police Department, he even was quoted as saying, "I'm not sure he's dead. Nobody that knew him identified him. You know, the coroner found him. A police officer and a security guard said, yeah, that's him. And he hadn't seen him but just driving by in a little security shack." Which is true. When we go off the island and come back in, the security people, you nod, wave. Most of the time they're looking at your pass to make sure that you're supposed to be there, and they're not really. I mean, if you went back and said, "What did that person look like?"
Right.
How many do you think they could identify? They're probably like, "I know what their pass looks like," because that's what they're looking at.
It's
to make sure they're valid. It's valid for the week they're supposed to be here. But it blows my mind that they would have somebody identify him, and then that wasn't even familial or even a friend.
No one that knew him. And
to say, "Oh, okay," and then just immediately cremate him. And I think I read that Dan had a sister. I don't think that he was close to his family, but I'm sure there were somebody who could have identified him. Why wouldn't they even have Miss Berry come?
That's true.
He lived with her. So who else could better identify him than the woman who put him in charge of everything?
At this point, she couldn't afford a plane ticket to come down or a tank of gas to get down to Fripp Island, South Carolina.
Well, maybe the police officers and the police department could help cut that expense, take care of it. But it just, the whole thing is just really weird because, I mean, I think some people think he was at the end of his rope where he's like, the cards are maxed out, I'm running out of money. But I don't think that he was running out of money. I think maybe he was realizing that someone's probably going to eventually start getting on to me if I continue down the road that I'm going, and it's time to cut ties with this.
Right. Well, there's also another theory out there that was way beyond my comprehension, and I started reading this, that some people speculated that Dan Tondevold wasn't Dan Tondevold at all to begin with. That it was actually Hugh Berry. That he did not die down in Mexico from pneumonia back in 1963 as had been reported, and rather he came back and Ellen Berry knew who he was, knew that was her son Hugh, and just to evade police from the killing of his grandmother back in 1951, maybe that was her way of bringing him back, that he could come in undercover. Or maybe that this was Hugh coming back under the guise of Dan Tondevold to get revenge on his family for lobotomizing him and sending him to Mexico. But both of those were disproved. I mean, those are wild, John Grisham style.
I feel like that's reaching theories at that point. Like they're just, so then you're saying that Dan didn't fake his death, Hugh did.
Right.
And then came back to life as a whole different person.
Right, and then faked his death again. Yeah.
It's like, I got away with it once, I'll try it again.
Double jeopardy thing. But upon research, there was a Las Vegas high school yearbook back in 1951 where there was Dan Tondevold's picture. So he was not from Denmark or wherever he claimed to be from. And a lot of Miss Berry's friends, they said, that's a pretty crappy accent. He was trying to put that on. That was bad acting.
And it's crazy that he put the wool over her eyes in that sense, because she was over there so much and so worldly and knew about a bunch of different cultures. Maybe that was one she hadn't experienced.
Maybe. But anyway, Dan Tondevold was Dan Tondevold, but he was from Las Vegas, and he had been arrested a few times as a minor for a few shoplifting, a few receiving of stolen goods. He had a rap sheet, but what was interesting is in that Las Vegas high school yearbook, Dan Tondevold was president of the Thespian Club. So he was into acting and performing even back in high school. And who knows how he caught word or got hooked up with the Berrys to begin his correspondence in the first place. But certainly it looked like he was looking to prey on a very wealthy elderly family. And that's exactly what he did.
And people would think that that's a lot of effort to, in a lot of years, to con somebody out of money. But when you have somebody of her stature and you know, so well known in the community, and to have as much money as she does, that's exactly what it does. Though it takes time to, you know, infiltrate that life and, you know, all the people around it, and get the money where they can trust you, and then eventually you can work out your plan. And it's not abnormal for it to take time to do that, and it seems like that's very possible. Unfortunately, there's never a solid answer because everything was destroyed when he was cremated, but it's an interesting theory to work with of the possibility that he was still continued to go out there and live his life. And who knows, did he do this again to somebody if he was still out there? Right.
And he very well still may be.
Yeah.
At 86 years of age, he would be, Dan Tondevold would be 86 years old today.
Same age as my Nana.
Yeah, so tell Nana, look out. Don't go getting a boyfriend or anything, especially if he wants to be.
We wouldn't allow it.
If he wants to play that he's from Denmark. Well, that is the wild, twisted tale of Dan Tondevold and his brazenness, his taking advantage and fleecing of elderly people, which I can't stand. But nevertheless, that's what happened. And that's how one of the largest fortunes in the state of Tennessee came to its very end in the marshes of Fripp Island, South Carolina.
That's right.
We appreciate you all listening. Again, we're going to be traveling throughout the island. Danielle's posting some pictures already on Instagram at Carolina Crimes Pod. Make sure we're going to probably put some videos on there, introduce you to some of our family members. I know a lot of y'all are interested in that dynamic from your emails and want to see exactly what Kevin looks like, what my wife Ashley looks like, kind of put a face with the name. But we're going to be doing that on Carolina Crimes Podcast on Facebook. Also, follow us on Twitter at SCCrimesPod, and or you can email us at carolinacrimespod@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out the inventory that we've got up. It's small, but it's growing. Over at www.carolinacrimestore.com. Get your t-shirts, your tank tops, your tumblers, everything you need for the beach for a good day. You can find it there at carolinacrimestore.com. And any parting words, Danielle?
I mean, again, like you always say, you can't say thank you enough. So thank you again to our listeners for your suggestions, your comments, for the downloads, for listening, and continuing to drive us forward in us doing this, because we'll do it as long as, you know, we're supported, and then there's a, you know, want for it. And we look forward to doing a couple more of these while we're on our trip this week.
That's right. And next week, we're going to have a Father's Day edition of Carolina Crimes. And, woo! This joker here, he's originally from Barnwell, South Carolina, and he's known the entire world over. And he's got a Hall of Fame resume with his profession, and he's also got a Hall of Fame rap sheet. And you're going to have to wait and listen to this one for Father's Day. But until then, thank you for listening to this week's edition of Carolina Crimes. Thank you for dealing with us with the audio issues. Again, we're on our mobile unit. We're not in our cushy studio. And we will see you next week. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Peacock fuels your true crime obsession with exclusive new originals like John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise.
He said to me, clowns can get away with murder.
Dr. Death, the undoctored story.
This guy's dangerous.
And Epstein's shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell.
She inherited Jeffrey Epstein's secrets.
There was this whole other world going on.
Plus the most bingeable crime series, Buried in the Backyard and Snapped. And with the Dateline 24/7 channel that's always on.
Did you want her dead?
You can't not obsess. Sign up now at peacocktv.com.
Life gets a lot more magical when you dream. So let's dream of a vacation unlike any other. A magical Disney cruise.
Hiya, pal!
Where new stories meet tales as old as time.
Enchanté, mon ami!
And your family will be cared for the moment you step aboard. Sail from Florida to Disney's private island paradise and get ready for a dream come true with Disney Cruise Line.